Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, a massive Indiana business park celebrates a decade of growth. A philanthropy icon is stepping down. An Indy nonprofit repurposes old Amtrak seats. The INnovators spotlights parking technology. A local effort to strengthen global health. Will the convention center expansion bring more sporting events to Indy? And how does quality of life impact economic development? Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. The 6,000-acre River Ridge Commerce Center in Jeffersonville is marking 10 years of development and has been growing with the addition of employers like Medline Industries and Niagara Bottling. In all, the park is about to pass 10,000 employees. Executive Director Jerry Acey joined host Gary Dick to talk about a decade of growth.
All right, let's talk about River Ridge. For those who don't know, it is a massive property, former Army ammunition facility, 6,000 acres in Jeffersonville, right along the Ohio River.
Jeffersonville, Charlestown actually is incorporated parts of River Ridge. So about 3/4 in Jeffersonville and 1/4 of the property is in Charlestown, the city of Charlestown. And 6,000 acres, that's a pretty significant, massive property. 6 miles of frontage along State Road 62 and the new connection to the new East End Bridge and 265 loop around the greater Louisville area.
Let's talk about development that has taken place there. In that complex, you have nearly 10,000 employees now who work at various companies, including places like Amazon. Talk about some of the big name companies, some of the investment and the vibe that's kind of going on at River Ridge now.
Sure. Well, we have a really good diversity of companies in several different industrial sectors. In addition to Amazon, we have Medline, which is one of the largest international providers of medical supplies. We have Enjoy Life Food, which is a food company that produces allergy-free snacks. We have 2 Tier 1 automotive suppliers, 6 other automotive-related pharmaceutical companies, food packaging and food labeling operation there, and some wood products as well. And
the amazing, the attractive thing about this Commerce Park is where you're located. Again, as you said, 6 miles of frontage on the Ohio River. You're connected to the Port of Indiana, Jeffersonville, the UPS World Port in Louisville, right across the river. You got one of the new Ohio River bridges, goes essentially right into the park. Tough to beat the location.
Yeah, it's a great location. Logistically, we're within one truck day's drive to 80% of the U.S. market. And then obviously with UPS and the international airport at Louisville. And then we have a local regional airport in Clark County. Just had a ribbon cutting on extending the runway there to a 7,000-foot runway, which can accommodate just about any size jet.
Talk about the impact. As I mentioned in the introduction, estimated at $2 billion now. What's the future? What's the potential impact that River Ridge has for Southeast Indiana, really the whole southern half of the state?
Well, we feel like we have an impact on most of the state to some degree. We have, again, 10,000 people, and they commute from, probably 50, 60 miles away in some cases. We have developed only 20% of the property.
I think that's an amazing thing.
Yes.
You've got all this activity, 10,000 employees, and only 20% of it's developed.
So we still have about 3,500 of really good, usable, developable property left to go. And our projections are the objective of the organization is to replace all the economic lost activity when the ammunition plant shut down. Anyway, at the height of production, there were like 27,000 people working there. So that's our ultimate goal, is to exceed 27,000 people and develop that entire site.
You're well on your way to doing that. A lot of talk about regional economic development around the state of Indiana. I assume that regional perspective probably fits here too, with the access to Louisville and back and forth and being out in that Louisville region.
Yes, it is. We actually cooperate with the city of Louisville and have joint marketing efforts associated with the company. Our most recent company that's under construction now, Niagara water bottling operation. It was a regional project that they identified the Louisville area, and we worked, with Greater Louisville Inc. organization and the mayor's office to come up with the best site in the region, and that was supported by Louisville. And then we also have the Regional Economic Development Southern Indiana organization, and then we're also a part of the South Central Indiana Economic Development Group. We do joint marketing with 7 other local economic development organizations, and 2 power companies.
Very good. Lots going on at River Ridge Commerce Center, and I know the next big thing, you're going to develop a business park, Class A office space that's going to be up front there at River Ridge. Jerry Easy, thanks for joining us, and keep us posted on more developments.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Right. Still to come, an Indy nonprofit is making handbags from a unique source, and new parking tech gets the spotlight on the innovators with Dr. K. But first, one of the biggest names in philanthropy in Indiana is announcing her retirement. Crystal House International CEO Crystal DeHaan is leaving the nonprofit she founded 20 years ago. DeHaan and her successor, former Indianapolis Mayor Bart Peterson, came in studio to discuss the transition.
Crystal, hard to believe, 20 years. Think back on that original vision for Crystal House International. You now have 8 schools around the world, a 9th coming at the beginning of next year. But the model really is about a long-term vision for these impoverished students. Talk about the vision and how it's transpired over the last 20 years.
Well, the vision was really grounded in my belief that when you are fortunate to be successful in business and create certain resources, then for me it was important that these resources would be deployed in the creation of human capital and not in the creation of market capital, because I had that through the sale of RCI. And I wanted to do something that was intergenerational, that was international, and that had a long-lasting effect of transforming lives. And it sounds very, very easy, but it is actually quite difficult to do, because it takes a very good model and a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of love.
98% of students pass exams to graduate from high school. 91% grads either continue in post-secondary or become gainfully employed. Those numbers are very impressive, and again underscores this long-term commitment that you have to these students.
Well, you know, our model basically runs in the first segment, kindergarten, through high school graduation. Then the college and career program, which supports our graduates through that period of time or integrates them into the workplace. So we feel responsible and are responsible for them for at least 17 or sometimes 18 years.
Wow. Former Mayor of Indianapolis, Bart Peterson, the first mayor in the nation to authorize public charter schools. So this seems like somewhat of a natural transition for you.
It is, Gary. I have a passion for education and have been pretty deeply immersed in it since I took office back in 2000. In fact, Crystal and I sat down just after I took office and had our first conversation about education and really clicked. And I think the fact that we have shared values about education is, maybe the genesis of the reason we're sitting here together today. But yes, and I've chaired the board of the Mind Trust for the last 12 years since it was founded, and I have remained with my fingers in education for really the last 20 years. But this is going to be quite a different level of immersion.
Well, and again, as I mentioned, 8 schools currently exist. A 9th will launch in Jamaica after the first of the year. As we've talked off camera, you talk about Crystal House International being run as a business, and you want to continue that model and that focus.
That's right. One of the things that most attracted me to this opportunity is when Crystal and I first sat down to talk about this, she made it clear. She set this up to be an international business that produced not profits, but that produced transformed lives. And that operational efficiency, I think, has been one of the most important pillars of the success of Crystal House.
You'll take over as CEO right after the first of the year. Crystal, as we wrap up, only about 25 seconds. You'll remain on as chairman of the board, right?
That's right.
And so you'll remain involved in the process.
Yes, indeed.
Very good. Crystal DeHaan and Bart Peterson, congratulations, Crystal, on the tremendous success of this idea you hatched 20 years ago, and look forward to future successes as well.
Thank you so much.
And Bart, we look forward to following your progress at the institution as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary.
Later in the podcast, a platform allowing businesses to make money off their parking lots, and a homegrown health initiative seeks global impact. But now, Indianapolis-based People for Urban Progress makes wallets, handbags, and backpacks from reclaimed materials, like fabric from the old Hoosier Dome. Now, the organization is making bags from the seats in Amtrak's Boston to Washington, D.C. trains. Reporter Mary Rachel Redmond has more.
In July, Amtrak made a special stop. Its destination, Indianapolis, where the passenger rail service donated more than 6,000 of its old leather seat covers to an Indy-based nonprofit that's become famous locally for turning trash into treasure.
We're going to repurpose over 100 train cars from Amtrak. And this train ran on the East Coast and is a business class line called the Excella Express. They're refurbishing their interiors. The leather is coming to us.
According to Jessica Bricker, PUP's Director of Design and Fabrication, working on this new Amtrak line has been nothing short of a challenge.
It's harder to work around than the dome fabric, because the dome fabric is basically a big sheet of fabric. These are like smaller pieces. They have seams that you have to cut out. The processing time takes longer for sure.
Here at PUP headquarters is where all the magic happens, where this old Amtrak seat becomes an elegant travel accessory.
We go through so many prototypes and they're kind of rough at first, but then all of a sudden it just doesn't look like trash anymore.
The new partnership with Amtrak not only opens the door to a wider market, but Callie says she also hopes it serves as a catalyst for a bigger conversation.
The audience before had always been hyper-local to Indianapolis, and now we're going to have customers from all over the country. The whole idea about recycling cities and looking around us and seeing resources that can have additional uses, this needs to be a national conversation, because when we throw things away, there is no real away. So leather seats that go into a landfill would just produce methane. So when we look at big infrastructure projects and how we're really looking at what happens and what comes out of those, we need to be considering these things. And I really believe that PUP can lead that conversation. There should be PUPs in every city thinking about this eventual reuse.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, a global health program targeting the most vulnerable populations. And could an expanded convention center bring more sporting events to Indy? But first, Indy-based Flex Park allows businesses to essentially sell their parking lots, which go virtually unused outside of regular business hours. The platform is currently in operation in the city's popular Massachusetts Avenue, Fountain Square, and Broad Ripple neighborhoods. Co-founder Michael Dowden gave us the details during the INnovators with Dr. K.
In your own words, what is FlexiPark?
FlexiPark is in part a digital technology solution to a parking problem.
Right.
And what we are able to do is utilize parking after business hours by installing a simple sign and use QR code, the basic QR code.
Right.
You scan the QR code and are able to check in using your mobile phone. That allows us to accept credit card payments on any property, anywhere.
Okay, so why the name FlexiPark? Why did you come up with that? I'm just curious.
Well, it's a flexible solution.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it just kind of stuck.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. It does. So how did you come up with this idea?
So the idea actually came about on Mass Ave.
Right.
One of the other co-founders was trying to drive to an event and drives past all of these empty parking lots that are posted no parking.
Right.
And after parking 3 or 4 blocks away and walking, he gave me a call while he was walking to the event and said, Michael, we've got to solve this problem.
So it came from a personal
It
problem,
really
right?
did.
Yeah, that we've all experienced. That's great. So what are the potential markets for this innovation, do you think?
I think there's a lot of markets. Initially, obviously, we started in Indianapolis because we're local here.
Right.
We also have a property in Bloomington, Indiana, and I see that as a market. But small to mid-sized cities that don't already have massive commercial parking infrastructure, I think are probably good candidates. We've been looking at such cities as Columbus, Ohio,
Great.
Louisville, St. Louis, even Pittsburgh.
Excellent. So what are the user benefits?
Well, obviously, as somebody that's driving and looking for parking, the benefit to you is now there's more parking available where you want to be.
Right.
The business that owns that parking lot now has an additional revenue stream. And interestingly enough, there's also a promotional aspect. People that might never have gone to their business or establishment before are now going to be there and see their place and their brand. And additionally, all the neighborhood businesses benefit as well, because now there's more parking. They can potentially have more patrons come through, and it's a lot more convenient for them as well.
Dual benefit, right?
Yeah.
Consumer and the business owners
Absolutely.
as well. That's fantastic. Source of capital.
Right now, we're self-funded.
Okay. And where do you go from here? What's the challenge coming up now?
I think the challenge coming up at this point is just the constant push for growth and expansion, right? We need to obviously expand within Indianapolis. We need to move to new cities.
Gotcha.
I think that the other big push that we want to work on is always working on automating more and more of this parking situation instead of making that manual.
Perfect. Well, as I do on each and every show, I do some of the Dr. Chase prescriptions. So I have the 3 C's for a growing technology innovation for you. First one is credence, to convince investors and others, property owners, that this is from concept to actual use now that you're doing.
Sure.
Second is capital. They need investment because, like you said, you're self-funding. You want to get some more capital for the improvements and the growth and expansion. And the last is collaboration, to partner with more private entities, right?
Yep.
So you can do the sales job and get this thing to really expand.
Excellent.
So I think it's going to be a great thing for you. Where can our audience find you?
Flexipark.com, and our parking lots are available in Broad Ripple, Mass Ave, and Fountain Square here in Indianapolis.
There you have it, Gary. FlexiPark coming soon to everyone. Solve the parking problem right here in Indiana.
Later in the podcast, the convention center expansion's impact on Indy sports and the role quality of life plays in attracting jobs. But now, Dr. Thomas Mote is working on a global health program launched in Indiana designed to improve the health of the world's most vulnerable populations. Tumaini Global Health looks to do it through health education at colleges and universities, including DePauw, Wabash, and Butler. Mote joined Kylie Valletta in the business of health.
Global health has an international focus, but Tumaini also embraces public health. Why is that an important distinction?
Public health is really the basis of our global health effort. There are a lot of definitions of public health, but the one we use is a community-led effort to increase the health of populations, often emphasizing prevention. So you look at upstream determinants of health like behavior and poverty, things like that.
And it's not just global, it's right here in the U.S.
It is. For example, an Asian American woman in Bergen County, New Jersey, will live to be an average age of 91, where a Native American in South Dakota on a reservation has an average lifespan of 58. So there are health inequalities right here in the U.S.
A major goal of Tumaini is to establish a medical school here in Indiana focused on global health. Tell us a little bit about that vision.
Well, there's only 2 medical schools in the world dedicated to global health and the health of populations. One is in Israel, one is in Cuba, which I've been fortunate enough to visit. We want to have a school here in central Indiana because it's such an important business area in biosciences, and there's a lot of people interested in this. We want to have an aspirational goal of low to no tuition so students can go out and practice in low resource settings.
And avoid student debt.
And avoid student debt. And we're going to combine principles of public health, health of populations, with the traditional medical school interest in caring for individuals.
You also have a really important mission focused on undergraduates. Tell us about that.
We're building a consortium of 4, hopefully, small liberal arts schools. DePauw has signed on as the first. We've brought speakers to DePauw, Wabash, and Butler, and we hope to get Rose Hallman involved too. And DePauw has actually started a global health major, and they have 42 students. It's the fastest growing major at the university.
The next major goal is to find a champion, as you call it, someone to really put some money behind this project to prime the pump.
Yeah, we've had the accounting firm that did the Marion College of Global Health, or of osteopathic health. Their business plan do one for us. And so we know what it would cost to get started. And we like to have individual champions so we can remain true to our vision and not get so involved with academic politics of other institutions.
And just a few seconds left, but this could be an economic stimulus also for Indiana.
We've talked about different locations from Greencastle to Indianapolis, but biosciences in the state of Indiana is in the top 10, ranks in the top 10 in the United States, and employs a lot of people, and this would also.
Thank you, Dr. Moat, for being here today. It sounds like a great project.
Kylie. Still to come, the economic incentives for cities to show just how great they are. But first, the Indiana Convention Center site in Indianapolis is set for $120 million in upgrades, including 2 new hotels, one standing 38 stories. Visit Indy CEO Leonard Hoops says the project will be big for convention and sports business in the city. He joined Inside Indiana Sports contributor Bill Benner with more.
USA Today, #1 convention city, but in your view, that's somewhat built on Indianapolis' longstanding sports legacy.
Oh, without question. In 2014, when USA Today named us #1 convention city, I felt that was kind of decades in the making as a result of being a great sports city, that sports strategy that began in the 1970s. And one of the challenges that has come with that is we've become a more popular convention destination. We have fewer and fewer dates for sporting events, which is ironic given how we got there in the first place.
Well, and this new development, then this could allow for simultaneous hosting of first and second round regional, for instance, along with a major convention.
Yeah, there's a lot of real benefits from expanding the convention center at Pan Am Plaza and adding these hotels. You're getting 1,414 more rooms as currently proposed, a 50,000 square foot ballroom. The whole podium as a whole is 235,000 square feet with meeting rooms, pre-function space, that sort of thing. At the end of the day, that allows you to do a couple things. You get to hopefully hold on longer for an event like the NFL Combine, which has been, Dallas and LA have been going after that hard. Right. The NCAA, while they have an MOU with us, we ultimately have to keep a competitive product, and I think this is definitely going to show how competitive Indy's product is down the road. And then you're going to have, as you noted, the ability to do things like we could have a first, second round for the NCAA men's basketball and host a convention at the same time with these additional rooms and additional space.
We should note that the development won't be done for the 2021 All-Star Game or the Final Four men's college football playoff in early 2022, but shortly thereafter. Yeah. But then again, it puts us in great position for future events, including the 26th NCAA men's Final Four.
Right. You're looking at probably a year from now, we'll be putting on the hard hats and putting shovels in the ground. It takes that long to do the engineering and all the legislative things you need to do and the developer agreement. And then it's probably a 3-year build out after that. So you're probably talking late 2022. But 2026 NCAA men's Final Four, the regionals in 25, will be in great shape for those kinds of events.
And the big one, Leonard, I got to ask, before this happened, people would have said Indianapolis Super Bowl, it was a one and done. Maybe not the case moving forward with this great new development.
Well, if there's any justice in the world, if there's a meritocracy in the NFL world, we certainly should be considered again for a Super Bowl when this development gets built out. I think, a lot of the cities with new stadiums are going to get their fair opportunities to get this. But at some point, you're not going to have a new stadium, and we hope that that's a year or two that the NFL will look back at us again and say, hey, this is a great new project downtown, right in the heart of the Super Bowl district. We are the inventors of the Super Bowl village. Let's bring it back to Indy.
All right. Well, Leonard Hoops, visit Indy. Thanks for being on the show, and keep the ball rolling.
Thank you, Bill.
And finally, quality of life and quality of place are growing buzzwords in the economic development world because more and more people are selecting a city to live in before looking for a job. So there's a big push for cities to show how livable they are. KSM Location Advisor CEO Tim Cook and President Katie Culp talked about the impact on economic development.
To process this whole quality of place issue in economic development, it's been talked about for a long time, but now it just seems it's pervasive. It's everywhere. How important is quality of place to the decision-making process?
Yeah, because labor is such a big deal now, quality of place is a key piece. Where do people want to live? Where do they want to work? And you try to make those be the same place if possible, and every community is trying to stand out in that way.
Yeah, and we hear a lot about that, about quality of place. And Katie, we're going to kind of define it, but do a lot of communities or some communities feel they've got quality of place when maybe they don't?
It's amazing. I mean, every time we go to a conference or meet with people who are visiting economic development people, they lead with almost every time their quality of place, quality of life. And it's not to demean certain communities, but it's all in the eye of the beholder a bit, and not everybody has the same rating.
Okay, let's look at some examples. When we talk about quality of place, what are we talking about? One, I know it's density, right?
Yeah, density. Is it easy to get around? Are there amenities within that area where the employees are, where they live? You don't want it to be too dense, but you don't want to have sprawl where you can't get to the types of activities that you want to be. It's a big focus, especially in the bigger cities.
So in density, would you be talking theoretically about a downtown Indianapolis, where
Absolutely.
now you've got that convergence of people and retail and...
That's a great example because you've seen it with the administrations. If you go to Ballard, Goldsmith, Peterson, and now with Mayor Hogsett, all of them have tried to create this downtown. And now it's something that really has caught a lot of attention in a positive way.
And it's because employers, they want to be able to attract this workforce, but workers don't want to be, in a city where there aren't other options and there's not a density, so that if they don't like that one employer, they can't go to another one. And so it's just that whole environment, and density is really important.
And density and connectivity kind of lends itself to public transportation. Public transit is another piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The times are changing, and so the bus lines are something that we're taking a look at, which is awesome. But who knows, over the next 10 to 20 years what that looks like. But being able to get around, especially in dense areas where there's traffic, is a major consideration.
So it's kind of a moving target on public transit. You mentioned, the bus lines. There are multiple ways you can go, and now with driverless cars and all the different technologies we see,
you want to take advantage of the technology. And what's interesting is because there's such a focus on labor now, it's not about how do you move goods from one place to another, it's how do you move people. And every city is trying to figure that out.
Another issue that relates to quality of place is diversity, and I think for in most sectors, but in particular the tech sector, that's a big issue.
We've seen a lot of discussion on that with HQ2 and the Amazon search, and they have that in their RFP. We're looking for a diverse workforce, and so some of the bigger cities have that. Other cities like Indianapolis are trying to create more diversity in the workforce.
Safety, public safety, of course, is always a big issue. How big is that in the quality of place formula?
I think it's pretty prominent, really. When it comes to quality of place, some of it's anecdotal in how you evaluate something, but some things are just kind of numbers driven. And crime, density, some of these things are very easy to quantify and to look at the numbers relative to other cities.
So safety, yeah, you're right. You've got numbers, you've got data that you can actually go on there. Is a city health friendly? Indiana doesn't stack up, unfortunately, tremendously well in that area, but that's another piece of the quality of place.
Yeah, and it's about walkability. How do you create trails? How do you create an environment that can be health friendly? I think Indianapolis can look at cities like Minneapolis, where it's not a great climate, but they're the one or two second healthiest city in the country.
All right, quickly to social issues, culture. That's big as well.
Yeah, social issues, they come into the diversity issue. Are we embracing the type of the diversity that we want to see with employers and that would attract the kinds of employees that will really make a mark?
Strengths, as we kind of wrap this up, strengths when it comes to quality of place and space here in Indianapolis?
I mean, it's nationally known. I mean, when it comes to the cost of doing business, to the type of home you can get in the school, I mean, all of these things, we have creative arts, we have a symphony. There are so many things that are unusual for a city of our size, and those are real strengths, and I think we're smart about playing to our strengths. And we're not trying to be someone we're not. I think some of the more conservative issues that we get hung up on can be sometimes to our economic development detriment. And sometimes when you compare us to a like-sized city that's a little more forward-thinking or state, I don't know that it's always a complimentary comparison for us.
Great perspective on quality of place, which is a huge issue. But now as we wrap up, I do want to get to the serious part of the segment. Today, right, or tonight, is Katzapper and Miller's annual Halloween party.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, last year, you guys won the
Yeah, we
best
did.
costume.
We did.
And I think we have visual evidence right there. Look at that. Awesome job. What are you going to be this year? Are you going to win?
It's we better win,
Okay.
and it's a Wizard of Oz theme, and the whole gang's involved. So
Awesome.
stay tuned.
After seeing that photo, our embarrassment is to infinity and beyond.
Very good. Tim Cook, Katie Culp, thanks very much for some great perspective.
Thanks, Gary.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.